What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Redonkulous Gaming. I wanted to do a quick video here on the change to Abomination Limb. Abomination Limb is the Covenant ability that you get from joining the Necrolord Covenant as a Death Knight. And again, as all my videos go, I'm really approaching this through the lens of tanking, and that's really what I'm going to be talking about. So first of all, let's talk about the change, because it was significant this week, really across the entire span of the Blood DK in each Covenant. But let's talk about the previous state of Abomination Limb. And previously, this is what the skill looked like. It's where you sprouted a limb for 12 seconds. Every 1 second, it dealt 22.5% of your attack power as damage to all nearby enemies, so it was hitting pretty darn hard. But the cool thing about it was that it pulled an enemy to your location if they were further than 8 yards away from you and you were in combat with that target, strictly PvE speaking, right? This, to me, and I'm kind of on record as just kind of being down in the dumps, I felt like from the very beginning this is absolutely the worst Covenant ability for a Death Knight unless you were PvPing. In terms of PvE content, there was very little silver lining as far as when this ability would be viable, and it mostly came down to being a trash hero in terms of being able to get free interrupts on spellcasters and to be able to strategically just keep moving as a Death Knight, to just keep interrupting things and having them pulled to you over the course of 12 seconds. So that happens once every second. But the 8 yards away thing was kind of obnoxious, and it's a really good way to piss off your group if you just keep moving and moving and moving and moving, although you really started to game the system a little bit. So out with the old, in with the new. This guy's gone, and the new ability that we were given is this version of Abomination Limb, which hits a little bit harder. I mean, it didn't get much of a damage buff, so it's minuscule. It's still up for 12 seconds, so you grow an additional arm, and it's up for 12 seconds. Every 1 second, it deals roughly the same percentage of damage that it did before to all targets. Or I'm sorry, to 5 nearby targets. So they capped it at 5 nearby targets this time around, and then it pulled an enemy to your location if they're further away from 8 yards to you. Sounds exactly the same, right? With the exception of the target cap, yes. As far as the fact that it just didn't give you any additional utility, especially from a tank perspective, the way that they've changed it now is that when you're in Blood Spec, the first time the limb pulls an enemy, you gain 3 bone shield charges. And then it goes on to say, Abomination Limb can only pull the same enemy once every 4 seconds. So me, as I'm reading this without having, if I were someone that just did not have access to beta, I would sit there and think, hey, this might not be so bad for PvE now, because the first time the limb pulls an enemy, you gain 3 stacks of bone shield. And in my mind, I almost feel like the first time the limb pulls a new enemy, or pulls an enemy for the first time, that's kind of where my mind went when I first read the tooltip. And then I got in and I actually tested it. And this last line is very important. The first time the limb pulls an enemy, gain 3 bone shield charges. And it should just be kind of like, period, that's it, end of story, because it goes on to kind of taunt you and says you can only pull the same enemy once every 4 seconds. So I'm sitting there thinking like, hey, you know what, even if you're tanking just 1 trash mob and you move it, or even if you're tanking maybe 5 targets and you move, you can game the system and get free stacks of bone shield. I'm going to go ahead and get in combat with 2 targets here, and I'm going to go ahead, and I have no bone shield up whatsoever. I'm going to go ahead and get my Abomination Limb. It's going to hit these 2 targets. I'm going to wander away. As I do, I just got 3 stacks of bone shield, and I'm thinking, great, let's go smack something else. Get 8 yards away from it. Give me 3 more stacks. Nope, doesn't work that way. You only get it once. It's on a 2-minute cooldown. So once every 2 minutes, it nets you 3 stacks of bone shield. If I'm in a hurry to get my bone shield up, or if I'm looking for, you know, an oh shit button to hit because my bone shield stacks have fallen off, that's not what I'm going to be pressing. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of reset the ability, get it off cooldown, so we can show this a little bit more. But when I compare it to, I don't know, Dancing Rune Weapon, which I'm going to pop now and just Boom. There you go. 2 hits and I'm up to 10. And I've got that now for 30 seconds. And I can just easily refresh that as things hit me just because I have Dancing Rune Weapon. So that is also on a 2-minute cooldown already. So already you can tell, and maybe they're not intended to be as powerful as one another, but my initial impression is I'm going to jump in combat. Abomination Limb. I'm going to run away. I'm going to get my stacks. I'm going to go back in. And I'm hoping, okay, I've got some more time. Nope, it doesn't even refresh my Bone Shield stacks for me. So even though the tooltip does read that you get 3 stacks for the first one that you pull, but it still needs to be clarified a little bit because it's 3 stacks, period. And then you've got a 2-minute cooldown. So the mitigation and the fact that they tried to give this ability a little bit more utility, let me just go ahead and showcase what it originally was. They've definitely made it better. 22.5% of attack power to all nearby enemies. Okay, this guy's gone now, doesn't exist. Versus 25.6 or 76% of attack power to 5 enemies. So damage goes up slightly. They cap it at 5 enemies. And then they also give you the utility of 3 Bone Shield charges. Not enough. Not enough to make this viable, especially when you compare it to both Night Fae as well as Kyrian right now. They are the changes they made to those, while Night Fae was certainly a nerf. Overall, Night Fae is still a better option and a net positive compared to this ability. I'm going to reset it again just to kind of showcase one more time. If I do nothing other than get in combat, hit Abomination Limb, there's my Bone Shield targets, and I don't get it again. Despite the fact you can kind of see that little, there you go. It shows that it's kind of pulling. It's trying to pull once every second. Okay? And I'm just not getting it. It's just not working properly. Or at least the way that I read the tooltip. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that this is just, it's either not working the right way or the tooltip is just relatively, just wrong. Let me go ahead. Try it one more time. Bone stacks are off. Jumping into combat. There we go. There's my 3 stacks. I'm going to stay out here. Just see what happens. Staying at 3 stacks. Staying at 3 stacks. Staying at 3 stacks. Nothing's changing. And it's off. So it's either not working at all right now, or it just doesn't matter. Period. Like, that's just the way it's supposed to be working. So they've got some work to do on this one. I just wanted everyone to know who doesn't have beta access exactly what this is doing, so that you have a good idea of currently where the ability stands.